Hello, everyone. My name is Rowan Vessel, and today I'll be talking to you on the topic of nuclear policy and the environment. And I hope you can get some useful information from this. So, let's first start with what happens in a nuclear reaction. Well, highly unstable elements like plutonium and uranium go through nuclear fission and they decay into smaller and lighter atoms. And the bonds holding these atoms together have relatively large amounts of energy stored within them. The splitting of these atoms results in a nuclear reaction and produces energy in the form of heat. So as you can see in the diagram, there's a large atom starting and it splits into smaller atoms through fission, and the neutrons and the particles releases a lot of power. And so that's useful. So what happens in a nuclear reaction power plant? Well, the most unstable forms of elements are split in a reactor, creating atoms and massive energy through nuclear fission, like we just talked about. This energy is transported via a liquid medium, usually water, which creates steam. Now, that steam, as you can see in the diagram, gets transported through to a turbine, and the turning of that turbine is what produces useful electricity. So basically, elements react in a certain environment, creating heat energy, which is converted into electrical energy, which we can then use. Okay? So, with that, we want to know what are the advantages and the disadvantages of production and use of nuclear energy. And so, let's start with the advantages. So energy is a great advantage afforded by nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plants can create large amounts of energy annually, actually up to 1 gigawatt on average for a power plant. Also, the total capacity for energy output is far greater than all other energy sources, up to 1.5 times for the next leading energy source, which is natural gas. Nuclear energy can help cities and even countries become more energy independent. Netherlands study had shown they were over 60% dependent on imports. So nuclear energy can be very useful to get energy independence. And actually, right now, 20% of USA's electrical energy is actually sourced by nuclear power plants or NPPs. So that means about 1/5 of America's energy at the moment is already being produced via domestic nuclear power plants. So another advantage that we can talk about is the clean aspect. The energy made from a nuclear power plant is far cleaner than that of gas, oil, and coal burning because of the absence of greenhouse gas production, GHGs. And we know that GHGs are responsible for the increased climate change that we're seeing. This means that there is a reduction of a total greenhouse gas emission when using nuclear energy. And this is very useful because we're becoming more aware of the consequences through anthropogenically induced climate change. And nuclear power plants are alternative to those. So another advantage is reliability. Nuclear energy is much more reliable source for energy besides actually all of the low to no emission alternatives of GHG based emissions. You can talk about wind power and solar power. Those were you can't run them around the clock like nuclear power. And since nuclear power plants can be run around the clock, it's ideal for reaching the energy demands of cities. Also, on average, a power plant only needs refueling every 1.5 to 2 years, a very minimal amount to refuel, but a constant source of power. So, now that we talk about the advantages, let's talk about some disadvantages of nuclear energy. One main one is the harmful waste. Nuclear reactors use water and reactor fuel rods in the process of creating energy. And these materials are exposed to unstable radioactive elements, and that becomes pollution and waste. These wastes are extremely harmful to organic life because of their mutation ability. And this type of radiation that they emit, which is gamma radiation, is very powerful as well and needs proper storage and disposal. So that's something we have to be aware of going on. So another disadvantage is time span. Radioactive materials must decay or break down into smaller particles in order to reduce its radioactivity, and they do this over time spans of half-lives. Half-lives are basically the time it takes for the initial material or element to be reduced to half of its original amount. And radioactive decay for materials used in nuclear power plants is a process that can take many years to complete. We're talking about many generations, span of a long periods of time. And the more nuclear products we use, the more future generations have to monitor and manage the waste that we leave behind. Also, we have to talk about, for disadvantages, storage and disposal safety. Nuclear power plants can't afford errors in management because of the serious repercussions of handling radioactive materials incorrectly. Again, this thing is very harmful to organic life, so we have to take care of the management. And we've seen Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island as examples of how human or mechanical error can cause serious disasters. And even with Japan in 2011, the earthquake, which is a natural disaster, caused a huge meltdown. And that just also shows how power plants are susceptible to compromise uh, in certain aspects. We have to be aware of that. So, even talking about all that, we have to address the core of the issue because we know the pros and cons, but there are certain things that we must talk about that needs to be addressed. In the community aspect, we have to talk about information and misinformation. A lot of times people do not have the resources to be informed about nuclear energy. It's not something that we learn on a regular basis in schools. So misinformation is easily spread when you're talking about the media. You have Toxic Avenger and all that stuff. So those things kind of show a bad light of nuclear energy and not necessarily the benefits of it. So we got to show both sides. And education and input regarding policy and zoning for the community is necessary so that they can come with the proper way to um, talk to the government about the about management of nuclear power plants. And let's talk about government. Now, when we're talking about government and municipalities, we have to make sure that there's effective policy that creates the proper environment for managing these nuclear power plants, and the expansion for nuclear power plants should be all under effective policy. Emergency contingencies should also be regularly updated because we never know when another disaster or an accident might happen, so you have to be prepared for that. Also, accountability of those power plants and people who are in control of those things should also be addressed. We can't have those things running amok. And also, education should be expanded and given to the people. That way, we can be on the same page when we're talking about policy. And my experience for my internship regarding nuclear policy and nuclear energy is that I'm dealing with the Thorium Community Program, which is a video program online and also on public access TV, which helps spread education about nuclear power plants, nuclear energy, nuclear policy, basically anything that has to deal with that alternative to greenhouse gas emissions. It's all about trying to inform the people with the proper knowledge about this alternative form of energy, the benefits, and the obstacles, and the advancements in technology. That's what they're about, and also the ability to make that information available is something that this internship is showing me, that the information needs to be readily available for consumers or for the community or whoever That way, they can make informed decisions when dealing with actual policy and government. And so, I hope this is a link between the information and general public. Um, and I think that the Thorin community will show that link or help foster a link to general public in regards to letting them know about the other benefits and other aspects about nuclear energy. And hopefully this was informative, and hopefully you have a better understanding of the pros and cons of nuclear energy, and I hope that you understand that the information about it is what's needed so that we can have a proper discussion about how we should regulate or go about using this alternate option, viable, very reliable alternate option for energy. So thank you.